looks over my glasses now.
Okie doke.
You're good? We're
Yep.
good? We're on film? I'm just gonna take these off. Thank you for coming. I was telling Anna that there are like 1,000 things happening tonight between gallery night and the cherry and spring rights, and there's a lot going on. So the fact that you're here and made some time in your evening to be with us really means a lot, so thank you. I'm just gonna say a couple of just brief words about Saltonstall, and then I'm gonna introduce Anna, and then I'm gonna sit and enjoy the rest of your talk. My name is Leslie Williamson. I'm the Executive Director of the Saltonstall Foundation for the Arts. If you're not familiar with us, we are an artist residency program out in Ellis Hollow. We've been around since 1995. And we support New York State artists and writers with residencies and retreats. And the reason that I'm here and the reason that we are hosting Anna's talk is that Anna was a fellow at Saltonstall for a 2-week residency last year. So when we decided we're thinking about what to do for spring rights, we thought, it could be really fun to do a little talk that combines the written word with the visual arts, which is sort of what Saltonstall is all about. Anna came right to mind. She says yes to great opportunities like this, so here we are. Anna Warfield is a soft sculptor and a poet based in Binghamton. Her predominantly text-based fiber works engage with the body, relearning, and identity. Her debut solo museum exhibition, Placid Thoughts from Inside Her Eyelids, is currently on view at the Roberson Museum in Binghamton. She has exhibited with the Memorial Art Gallery in Rochester, the Finger Lakes Community College in Canandaigua, the Herbert F. Johnson Museum here at Cornell, and the Schweinfurth Art Center in Auburn, among other venues. Just a moment. This is really good. My glasses on. Oh my gosh, it's so much better. In addition to her Saltonstall Fellowship last year, Anna is the recipient of a 2023 NISCA Artist Fellowship, an inaugural Broome County Arts Council Artist Residency, a 2023 Community Foundation for South Central New York Women's Fund Grant, and an honorable mention in the 2023 Southern Tier Biennial, among other honors and awards. Anna holds a BFA and a Bachelor's of Science in Communication, both from Cornell University, where her 2018 thesis received the Charles Baskerville Painting Award. Please give a warm welcome to Anna Warfield.
Thank you all for being here. Oh, I'm so excited. Please forgive me. I made a series of notes so that I would follow a chronological order, and it's also a little abnormal for me to try and lean more into talking about the literary side of what I'm doing, so this is exciting, and I'm happy to do this as an exercise. I'm also on Instagram Live right now as a request, and also a nice way to try and extend the reach of this a bit, which is new for me, so thank you for those who are waving at me. This is new. Okay, so I just wanted to first take a second to thank our hosts, Buffalo Street Books. Of course, I wouldn't be able to do this without you being so generous with your space and your resources. So please take a look around the store as we finish this talk. They are open and you can happily purchase. I'd also like to thank Community Arts Partnership and Robin for the introduction, for being here, and for all the hard work that you put into Spring Rights Literary Festival, as well as Gallery Night is happening as well. It's very conscious and generous of you to have me here scheduled during that. And of course, Leslie, the Executive Director of Saltonstall, for hosting me this past fall, as well as for reaching back out to have me do this tonight. I'm honored. So I'm just a lay of the land. We're gonna do a little bit of groundwork for just understanding my work in general, so that anyone who is new to my work can have that baseline, but then I'm gonna take you on a tour of some newer projects that I'm working on that are a little more collaborative, that I'm very excited about. And then if you would like I said, I have a participatory table off to my left, your right, where you can offer some words. Throughout this year, I'm going to be building a series of just contributed words from other people, so that I can do a participatory poem installation towards the end of the year. And without further ado, I'm Anna. In case you didn't know, I'm a text-based soft sculptor, as was already introduced. I currently live in Binghamton, but I'm from Whitney Point. Has anyone driven through? Stopped? Has anyone stopped in Whitney Point?
Yeah.
Oh, you stopped? Cool. So that very small town is where I grew up. I am very much born and bred upstate New York artist. And I think core to both my practice and where my headspace is just generally is advocating for arts and arts opportunities for us as artists. I think that upstate artists have sort of a different scene to navigate than downstate, and it's worth kind of talking about. All that being said, I grew up in a very creative fiber-based household. I was very fortunate to have a very nurturing set of parents who both were very encouraging of me being in a studio space and would give me the resources and the creative freedom to like make a mess, and it wasn't a big deal, which I fully recognize as a huge part of, for myself and for other artists that I've talked to, like if you're given that creative nurturing, you're often gonna kind of allow that part of yourself to grow. I was surrounded, like I said, by fiber in particular, which addresses kind of where my head is at currently in the work that I'm still making. Fabric was very much a medium of sort of an emblematic of here's a big event, here's a quilt to memorialize that event. When I was 16, my aunts and my sister and my mom worked together on a quilt to commemorate that moment. When I graduated from college, same deal, a quilt to commemorate that moment. When people get married, you get a quilt. When people have babies, there's a quilt. You're sensing the theme. So fabric was a milestone, but it was also comfort. It was this way of sort of connecting to the people in your life, but having this tangible takeaway as a sort of, I can take you with me to college, even though college for me wasn't too terribly far. Or for my sister, she can take home with her in these objects as she moves out west. Yeah, like I said, I went to school kind of nearby. And my interest in school was fortunately also art and communication. Communication for me sort of was like a nice way to bridge between the esoteric world that is the arts and then also kind of wanting this more tangible, almost more book studied side of my brain to get fulfilled, to break down the art space into something that was more digestible. And I think they worked really well together. For me, I use both simultaneously, and my advisor from concurrent degree, Florencia, would love to hear that. And I just told her about that recently, actually. So I was always interested in the way that we communicate as people. I think I felt generally like I was not, of course now I'm stuttering, not very clear, or maybe I wasn't understood, or maybe my voice like wasn't loud enough or just didn't matter. And so I was like processing that through undergrad. And trying to like come to terms with it. And then there was a certain point where I realized, oh, I want to be heard. I and Crit have this opportunity to like present my voice. And that's when I started to bring in text to force people to hear my voice, because I also kind of simultaneously began to realize it was maybe a social situation where, like, I don't know who's experienced this in the room, but sometimes just as like women or femme-identifying individuals, we get spoken over, we get talked over, and if a man says the same thing next to me, it'll get heard. And so I wanted to like focus the attention onto my words in those situations. So yeah, I was working on finding my voice again. You can call me Ariel if you want. And that was one of my favorite movies growing up too. This is just a video that I actually meant to play while I was talking just there. But my notes were on the previous slide. This is a little bit, this is part of my current exhibition at the Robeson too, so you can see it there, but I wanted to give a sense of my process. It's slow. I think we live in like a social media age where a lot is just presented at like warp speed, quick edits, and it's done, right? This is just a way of showcasing for others just the slow, sort of monotonous aspects of the process broken down. And it's not necessarily, I don't make all the pieces the exact same way, but it typically starts with me dyeing fabric, if I am dyeing fabric, and then a reverse sort of cutting down process of the words, sewing them together, inverting them, stuffing them, and creating what you see around me. So as I started in this pathway of trying to figure out and find my own voice again, I knew that there were certain things that I wanted to really focus in on, one of which included getting extremely clear and almost distilling sort of emotions or thoughts or ideas down to the point where we go full circle and they become nonsensical again, and that's where I ended up, and I've landed in that place. From the nonsensical sort of distilled clarity, I've moved then again into like this additional shift, which I think is really applicable to people in this room probably, where I see them as physical, like concrete poems in physical space, like where their structure informs the meaning as well, but it's in the round often or suspended behind me. So this is some of the early work that led me to the way that I'm making now. These initial versions of the thing were catered to my mom's dining room table scale. So that's like roughly 5 feet-ish, give or take, on a good day. I wanted them to like take up space. So these initial pieces, I would say, less oriented towards concrete poetry, but more oriented towards just taking up physical space in a gallery. So they're suspended always, including what you see behind me in some like iteration, because I want them to kind of be in the room with you. And initially these were like, I wanted them to be like body sized, more or less. So like they often reference the body, they're very command oriented, they're self-aware, like the idea is that it draws attention to whatever it's talking about for you as you read it. Like, who is the audience? Is it you? Is it me? Who's it speaking about? It's meant to be like sort of bite-sized things that you can hardly find words for, and also again like clear but unclear, like bridging that line or towing that line. Very interested in sort of gender, sexuality, being comfortable enough to like bring up uncomfortable conversation points. I think harkens back to the fiber aspect, right? Like fiber as a comfort medium, but then conveying topics or ideas that might be less easily bridged without a comfort medium perhaps. So that's where it started. This was 2019 was like the first round of getting this weird thing out of my brain and into the ether, into the air. I kept going and they got bigger, as I think it kind of tends to be the case if you're gifted with more space to create, which I was at this point. This is what, 2021. Me for scale in the background there, because I think it's tough to kind of communicate. Like, it's people scale, but there's not a person right next to it. My friend Jim is in the background, but you can't quite tell. So me for scale. So this is one of my bigger pieces, and this is when I started to think about concrete poetry. It, like, is meant to kind of look like a tongue, like with weird like color changes, and sort of the shape is like you know what I mean by that. And I don't love doing poetry readings, but I told myself, Spring Rights Literary Festival, you've got this. So if you can't read it, it says, tongues roll over festered wounds and exhale putrid bile. And if you take a look at the year that it was completed, I started writing it around the presidential election in 2020. So, and it was completed right before inauguration in January. For a little bit of context, I think oftentimes I'm trying to, like I said, articulate ideas that I can hardly find words for, and then simultaneously, that often means that it's related to the things that I'm paying attention to, and I tend to be politically engaged. This piece was a massive step into the direction of concrete poetry. So it's a long, rambling poem that I didn't write out for myself because it's too long, and I would have had a heart attack if I had to read that for you all today. But it's on my website if you're curious. And the idea of this poem was that it would be something that is rambling and hard to follow as you read through it, trying to find first the start point within the poem, but then getting lost in its like nonsensical like grammatical structure as it goes on and on. And it is rambling and it contradicts itself, and it's about like spiraling, and to see people read it in space involves them creating this similar tornado-like motion, which is fabulous. Like, it's my favorite thing to watch. That's a big version, which ironically came first. I didn't test the theory of what I was doing here on something smaller until after, when I made Slow Reverse, which was similar idea, but like more condensed. This one I will read to you. Circular thoughts and backward thinking rotate around your tongue in slow reverse. Again, still really focused on like drawing attention to bodies, to our bodies, maybe more intimate spaces within our bodies. And then I think this is kind of where I started shifting into maybe thinking about mental states a little bit more, probably also with the previous piece as well. And here, this is called amalgamation. This is me stepping into a space where I'm fully kind of done trying to like be clear for you all. like we've gone through the arc, right? Like, I want to be clear, I want to be understood. Now I want to confuse you kind of, but I still want you to be able to read it. Now I want to have taught you all those things, and here is a large blob for you to not be able to read, and I want you to be frustrated, and if I'm in the gallery, I want you to come up to me and say, well, what does it say? And I'm currently teaching small humans of the 4th and 5th grade variety art practices, and we're making words together, and I showed them this piece and they're like, what does it say? And I was like, well, do you ever have too many thoughts? Is your head like ever like super busy and like you can't quite articulate what you're feeling? And I was like, does it kind of feel like maybe this? Like this is what that feels like to me. Like, there's too much going on and back and forth. I don't want you to be able to read it or parse it out. Fun little Easter egg, if you do go to my Roberson show, there is a mock studio with text on the back wall that if you take a photo and zoom in, you can actually read this whole thing. But that's only if you go to the show, which you should do. Shameless plug. This is a big jump in scale for me. It's called Baptized. It reads, baptized by increasing extremes and drowning in unmet needs. Was a piece that I made for Binghamton, specifically for a festival called Binghamton 2 Degrees, and it was the idea behind the festival is for artists to conceptualize what Binghamton would look like after 2 degrees of warming. And I was thinking about like not having enough resources, which is already a state that we're kind of currently in. I felt like, I don't know, I think baptism and water are like a huge part of that. And like, we do need to like make changes, and baptism can be like a emblematic of change, right? And so it was also suspended under like a bridge that bridges the gap between like a really affluent part of town, downtown, but then also like we know that unhoused people like live under that bridge and find shelter there. So it kind of was meant to draw attention to all of that, wrapped into one. It's also a step into my sort of blue work, which includes Limp Fallacies. I went back and forth on if I would read this one to you. Sorry, Mom. It's okay. Any guesses on what we're, no. So Limp Fallacies, and this is, I try to like make it clear like on my website. If you're meant to read the piece, I will like include the text because that is important to like how you experience the work. This one is meant to like also have like a pile happening on the floor too, so it's kind of meant to be legible, kind of not, and like depending on where it is, it like reveals more of itself. But it reads, spit placid thoughts and bunch a tongue up against glass eyelids as limp fallacies trace the corner of your mouth. So that's what that one reads. Yeah, and I made this piece during my Saltonstall residency. And I believe my friend Leslie took this lovely photo of me. And my work actually condenses down pretty well, which I really enjoy. So this is the whole piece in a chair right there, which was fun for me. But yes. And so this, again, still in the concrete poetry kind of mental space. Like I want the piece to feel kind of limp and in spaces that it occupies, but then also like to be referring to that in both the title and then the work itself and what it's thinking about. Where's it gonna go after this? I guess we'll find out. This is an install image of my current exhibition. There's more blue pieces that I have made. Usually it's like a change in voice, like is how I decide what color I'm going to be making it in. If it's command language, it's most often pink, and if it's maybe sort of like more banal or just like different subject matter or what I'm thinking about, tends to be blue. I made baptized blue because it made sense with the water, for instance. Like if we're going to talk about water, it should probably be blue, and it fits within the sort of guidelines that I'm working within just right now for myself, between those two colors. So my current exhibition, Placid Thoughts from Inside Her Eyelids, is currently on view through July. If you're not comfortable in like gallery settings, don't worry, I've made a word search. So it's easy to navigate. It'll give you something to look for. It'll make sure that you look at all the work, but don't feel weird about it. And that's something I think, like I started talking about, like making opportunities for artists, but also accessibility. And like, I think navigating, going from school here, which was like this very esoteric space, and then also wanting to have the communication side because it felt more concrete. I think that's like kind of a dichotomy that's like just in my life in general, is like wanting to engage with multiple spaces and trying to be accessible on different levels, which includes like, how do people engage with art? Are they comfortable walking into a white cube? Are they comfortable going into a gallery? If not, is public art maybe where I should be like thinking, and things like that. So same with the work that I started making during COVID, which is on view at the Roberson right now, and also leads into the work that I'm going to work on with you guys if you want to participate, which is like touch-based. So I'm realizing now I wanted to show this photo because a lot of people we found wanted to touch all of the work in the show, which is exciting, right? Because we've talked about tactility, we've talked about fiber as like a material that is inviting, and typically is inviting, but like how do you navigate that from like the gallery setting? Often you don't want people to actually touch the work. And I went through this arc. I remember this in my work previously where I wanted to like have people physically engage with my work. So I was making books. I wanted people to page through them. And that was a good tool for bridging understanding of like what people were engaging with. Like it could be a book art piece can be something that is accessible both by someone who is thinking about it more conceptually and by someone who just knows that a book is something that you turn the page of. Yeah, so I started working in that way at one point, and then I stepped away from it because I wanted to make these weird objects that I love to touch. Didn't really think about necessarily how that was going to go in the Roberson, and then like found that everyone just wanted to touch it, and now I'm trying to think of how to be more participatory again in different ways, which I'll come back to. But it's making me think more about collaborative work. So these are two poems that I started during COVID when we all had lockdown and the COVID residency, as many artists called it. We all thought that we were going to be making work nonstop, like this was gifted time. But I don't know about anyone else in the room, if you were writing and got writer's block, but I certainly did, because like I don't know how to write when I'm not experiencing the world. So I ended up working on these, actually it's 4 poems in total, but a series of poems where I kind of gave a formula, not unlike a Mad Lib, and people through Instagram were able to contribute to the poem. And then after contributing words to my schematic, I let people vote, and that's how we decided which words went with which poem. Like upvoted words went one way, and then we would switch where they would end up based on people's participation. So this is what it looked like. That's my cat Potato, studio cat. He's very involved because he would prefer I be petting him. Yeah. And so I would just ask for, give me a noun. People would give me nouns. Give me a verb. Give me that verb. I had to describe what some of these things were because I was like, I don't know if other people are going to know what I mean by this. And then afterwards, after I had collected, I kept everything. I took all the information and I have a spreadsheet from all the poems that individuals created for me. So I have the individual poems from people. And then I fed back words from those poems for people to then vote on. So press versus sip. What's that say? It says lovely, pungent, there we go. Pungent versus lovely, vessels and galaxies. And these were, this isn't actually the best example because there's 4 poems from this, but these are what was made. You get the idea. And so now what I'm working on is leaning more into that collaborative space. And like I said at the beginning, over the course of this year, I'm going to be working on just collecting and creating words from other people and making a piece where, not unlike refrigerator magnets say, we can participate by grabbing the words from my pile and just, I'm assuming at some point I'll figure out the true system for this thing, but you could change the pegs on the wall with the words yourself. So that we can have more participation and collaboration in the making process. So some things to just plug for myself. Placid Thoughts from Inside Her Eyelids is in Binghamton, not too terribly far from here. And it's up through July. And I know sometimes having an end date that's so far out is I'll get to it at a different point, but I really encourage you to go see it before it closes because I'm really proud of it, and I've been told that it's exciting to see it in person for sure. Documentation is one thing, but in person is a whole other experience. And I don't know when I'll be able to exhibit my work this way again. I'm very fortunate to be able to do this, so I just want to push people to go see it while you can. I'm starting as of yesterday. Yesterday was the 1st, right? 2 days ago? Yeah, at some point. My BCAC residency, which you mentioned, just kicked off. So on the 25th, I'll do an open studio with them where I'll talk more about that project and or just have time to sit with people and maybe talk through how that could actually be more participatory or whatever it needs to be. And a culminating first Friday in June, exhibition type thing. And then, since you're here, we're collaborating. Melissa Conroy from my Instagram Lives. We're collaborating on a knit project. Melissa Conroy is a faculty at Cornell and specializes in knits in general. And I was invited into this project, and we're going to be knitting a touch-sensitive book together that uses conductive fibers, and as you touch it, handle it, will create sound, which will be exciting. So those are the things that are coming up. Again, thank you for having me. Happy to be here, and I can take questions.
How often do you go visit your exhibit?
Oh,
I would want to go every day if it was,
It's very close by. I should go more, I think. I feel like I'm in there, well, all of March I was there every Saturday for Women's History Month. I did a program where I was making art in the exhibition, which was fun. And I did another weekend of that this past weekend. So I've been in there with some frequency. Yeah. It's always weird to experience people experiencing your...
Right, I'd want to pull up a chair and just watch people.
And I do.
Yeah.
And when it first went up, I was just trying to hide because I didn't know how it was going to go. What would people say? I don't know. And so that was weird. But now I'm curious how people go through it. Yeah.
I have a lot of questions about the
Okay.
actual fiber aspect of it, but I'll just
Okay.
ask one. So you said that you naturally dye everything?
Well, I don't naturally die.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, you dye.
I dye everything. Most of it. Everything in this is dyed by moi. the big blob in the middle is like one of the only pieces aside from the hot pink piece in that room that I didn't because I needed to expedite my process. So I did buy pre-dyed muslin and I was tough to like allow myself to do that, but I was like, I need to make a change that like will allow me to actually execute this vision in a way that I want it to be done.
And then I see like some letters are a lot bigger than other letters. During your process, when do you decide, is it just like the action of the word and like how much it means in that sentence? How do you like decide?
Yeah, so the question was how do I decide on like scale of word or like changing, and that's evolved over time. Like some of the earliest piece that I showed, which was Speak, I was very methodical about how I was doing it. I was like, I have X number of yards and I'm gonna do each letter this size, and they were all the exact same size because I think I was like working from maybe like a quilting mental space, and that is a very like rigid structure. And then I realized, oh, I could just freehand these and like see where that takes me. And that tongue was the exhale piece that looks like a tongue was like more freehand. And I drew that out, and I wanted it to like feel more fluid. And I was trying to like the words that felt most important, I wanted to like draw more attention to. And that came through in the dyeing process too. It's not in my slideshow, but parched like fades from like a fade like a white space to like a more intense red or maroonish pink, and like that was important for like emphasis. Yeah, and then in this piece, I think I knew that I wanted to like break away from, one of my friends called it intestine font. Yeah. And it's fabulous, right? Because I want you to like be like self-aware of your body. So I'm like, oh, it's really fitting, like inside out, like, yeah, it's great. So I was trying to break away from intestine font a little bit, but also like in thinking about why am I so consistent with my fonts? I was like, well, I don't need to be. There's not really a rhyme or a reason behind it. So just trying to get like pull for myself more variety.
What's your most treasured quilt?
My most treasured quilt, probably the one I use the most often, which is the graduation quilt, which I remember my mom got pretty frustrated because I changed my mind left and right, and she did a great job. So one side is gray because I was like really into black and gray by the end of the quilt, and at the start of the quilt when everyone was picking out the colors and stuff like that, I was very into like pinks and purples. So one side is like this lovely ombre of like pinks and purples, and the back is gray. And I love it because I'm the same now. I'm very like flip-floppy. So like sometimes the gray side is up and the other times, yeah. And just, yeah, and wow, it's really poetic because I feel like in a lot of ways it's still me as a person. Like, I oscillate. Yeah.
For a piece like this one right here, does it have a variety of ways that it's draped, or is it always do you have a specific way that it needs to be hung?
It needs to be like, it needs to have the spit side down. And then it needs to touch the ceiling. And I think where that happens, I've like allowed to change. Like obviously in this case, spit was off the ground, which is totally fine. But then it needs to clump up. Like that's what needs to happen. And I recognize that it's gonna show up in different ways in different spaces depending on ceiling height or where it's gonna go. And I've accepted that that's fine, but spit has to be legible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's actually really kind of neat to the experience of reading it in terms of the weight and it does have a bodily experience. You know what I mean? And, do you know what I mean? That the way that L is now stretched out, and I had to sort of wander up that L to get to the rest of it, and the U. You know, it's just it's very fun to read that. And then again, it's clear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I installed it, I remember I was like, oh no, because it was like almost a straight line. So I was like, how do I like figure out the wonkiness of this? And I was like, no, it's like part of it. It's just taking me through its wonkiness. Yeah.
So I have to keep talking. I have to take the recording device away. So
Okay.
thank you, everybody.
We can